This is what they meant when they said, don't talk to strangers. In the early 1900s, a 10-year-old boy was playing in the woods when a tall man appeared and asked if he wanted to come back to his cabin for dinner. Totally caught off guard, the boy reluctantly agrees and begins walking. When they get to the cabin, the boy is relieved when he sees Paul, a family friend, sitting on the porch, so the boy happily goes inside. After they eat, the boy says thank you to the strange tall man, says bye to Paul, and then he leaves. He had only walked a few steps when he sees his family, along with Paul, running up the path towards him, frantically asking if he was okay. Confused, the boy says, I'm just fine, and he looks at Paul and he's like, why didn't you tell them I was with you at the cabin? And he points over his shoulder. Paul glances over the boy's shoulder and then narrows his eyes. This is why you should always lock your doors. A junior in high school was home alone working on a paper while his parents were out to dinner. All night he sits with his back to his door, sitting at his desk with his noise-canceling headphones on. Around 11 o'clock, he takes his headphones off at the same time his parents are returning to the house, and he hears his mom from downstairs yell, "Hey Adrian, what happened?" Confused, he runs downstairs and sees right away what she's looking at, muddy footprints all over the rug. He tells her, I didn't leave my desk. And then they realize someone must have broken in. They look at the footprints and there's none leaving the house. They're worried someone's still in the house, so they run into the garage, terrified, call the police. Police arrive and they don't find anyone in the house, but they do make a chilling discovery upstairs. The police bring them to the kid's bedroom door, which had been left open all night, and they point to the message written on it in Sharpie. This is the actual transcript of what was written on his door, which means for nearly 2 hours, someone stood in this kid's doorway watching him.
What would you do if this happened to you? Once a young woman named Claudia was about to walk home when it started raining heavily. Not wanting to be rained on, she decided she should get a taxi instead. As she walked down the empty streets past the cemetery, a taxi approached her. She got in and quickly realized something was wrong. She began feeling unusually cold and noticed the windows were covered in ice. Then things got even weirder. Claudia realized that they were going the wrong way. She blurted out to the driver, "We're going the wrong way," but got no response. She raised her hand to tap him on the shoulder and the driver looked back. Claudia let out a scream. She couldn't believe what she saw. The driver's face was withered and pale, his skin clinging tightly to his bones. Claudia began to panic. She tried to open the door and jump out, but nothing worked. She even banged on the windows to try to get passers-by's attention, but nobody heard her. Then, in a fit of desperation, Claudia began to scratch at the driver to make him stop driving. His withered face came off into her hand, revealing a gleaming white skull beneath. Claudia and that taxi was never seen again. This is why you should not listen to your teacher. Once something terrifying happened to Sophia when she got to school. She went to class as usual when her teacher burst into the room and said, "Sophia, I have some bad news." She was shocked and embarrassed to be called out like that in front of her whole class. Her teacher then said, "Get your things. I just got off the phone with your father. He said your mom was in a horrible accident and he's gonna pick you up now and take you to the hospital." Sophia instantly froze in horror. She tried to explain, but her teacher kept interrupting her. "Why are you just standing around? Get your things now." But Sophia wouldn't move. She knew something wasn't right. She said, "I don't have a father. He passed away long ago and I never got to meet him. I was raised by a single mother all my life." To this day, Sophia still doesn't know who that man was claiming to be her father and what he planned to do if she had gone with him. This is why you should never go to sleep early. Once there was a girl named Rebecca who shared a bedroom with her sister. But one night something terrifying happened. Something no one can explain. Her sister would always go to sleep early because of work, but one night Rebecca felt exhausted from school, so she decided to sleep early too. She could have never expected the horrifying things this would lead to. When she opened her bedroom door, the lights were already off and her sister was in bed. She asked, "Are you asleep already? I still have to shower." Her sister replied, "Lie down. It's too late, shower in the morning." Rebecca said, "No, but her sister interrupted her. "I said lie down." This time her voice was much angrier. Annoyed, Rebecca went into the bathroom anyways, but found someone was already in there. Then her mom came out of the living room. "Dad's taking a long time in there, huh?" Rebecca said, pointing to the bathroom door. But her mom looked confused. "No, he's in the living room with me watching TV." Rebecca stopped. That's when the bathroom door opened and her sister stepped out. To this day, Rebecca still wonders who was in her bedroom and what would have happened if she had lied down like it told her to. Have you ever felt like you've forgotten something but can't remember exactly what you forgot? Well, for this one woman, this feeling would lead to a terrifying discovery. She was on the bus on her way home from work one night when she was certain she left something behind in the office. She thought to herself, maybe it's nothing. She had a long day and she just wanted to go home for the night. But of course, she could have never expected the horrifying truth. This feeling of not being able to remember what she forgot became more and more intense. She thought about everything that happened that day. Her boss staring at her creepily, the secretaries gossiping, then she bumped bumped into a man on the bus. She quickly said sorry, but he ignored her. As the bus came to her stop, she stood outside her home and couldn't shake the feeling anymore. She had to go back to the office to find out exactly what she forgot. It was very late at night at this point, but she made it back. She ran up the stairs and opened the office door, but what she saw could only be described as unimaginable. As this woman slowly knelt down on the floor, she finally realized what she left behind. It was her body lying on the floor, strangled to death.
Story time about how a stranger wandered into my house and it led to something amazing. I woke up one night to someone ringing my doorbell over and over vigorously. I looked at the clock and I saw it was 3 a.m. I went to the door and looked out of the peephole and saw a young woman outside on my porch. I opened the door and could immediately tell that she was intoxicated. She started explaining to me that she was at a bar down the street and lost her phone. That's when she asked if she could use mine and call someone for a ride home. It was freezing outside, so I reluctantly let her in. She asked me for water, so I led her to the kitchen. She proceeded to open my fridge and start eating my lunch meat and various other snacks. She then kicked off her heels and sat down at the table with a jar of pickles and started talking to me like she's known me for years. She told me her name was Krista and asked me how work was and what I was up to tomorrow. I reminded her that she needs to call someone to come pick her up and handed her my cell phone. She took the phone and FaceTimed her brother. She told him that she needs a ride but she has no idea where she's at and handed me the phone to talk to him. I told him the situation and gave him my address to come pick her up ASAP. A few seconds later, my doorbell began ringing again and someone started banging on my door. I went to the door and opened it to find a guy outside and he looked furious. This is when things got intense. Part 2 of how a stranger wandered into my house and it led to something amazing. I opened the door and quickly found out that this guy was Chris's boyfriend and it became clear that they were in some sort of fight. Krista started telling him to leave and accused him of following her and kept screaming at him that it's over between them. The guy turned his attention to me and asked what guy Krista was here to sleep with and began accusing her of coming here to cheat. He started yelling at me for helping her. All of a sudden, he grabbed Krista by her hair and started dragging her out of the house. I quickly ran after them and started screaming at the top of my lungs for him to let her go. Luckily, one of my neighbors heard the commotion and came to our aid. The guy let Krista go, but now he was trying to fist fight my neighbor. A few seconds later, a truck pulled up to my house and a man jumped out, which turned out to be Krista's brother. I quickly explained the situation and helped Krista into his truck. Krista's brother proceeded to confront her boyfriend, who was still making a scene, knocked him out clean with one hit, and drove off, leaving her boyfriend knocked out cold on my front lawn. Her brother texted me the next day thanking me and apologizing for knocking that guy out in my yard. We started texting back and forth and getting along, and I actually asked him out a couple days later. We've been dating for a few months now thanks to his drunk sister stumbling onto my porch. I guess everything happens for a reason. Story time about how I was saved by a stranger. I'm a petite girl and because of this, I avoid confrontation whenever I can. I'm pretty good at it because I've always had a strong sixth sense thing going on. I try my best to avoid people who make me anxious and it's allowed me to survive some very dangerous situations. I live in West France and went to visit a close friend. She had broken her leg, so I decided to go and cheer her up with some gifts. The atmosphere was so nice that I didn't notice when it got dark outside. Despite how late it was, I decided to go home. I was 40 minutes from home, but I walked this distance many times without problems and thought it would be fine. However, I was wrong. Less than 5 minutes later, I had a strong feeling that something terrible was going to happen. As I approached one of the bridges in the city, I didn't see anyone around. I thought my senses were playing tricks on me and kept going. About 20 meters from the bridge, I heard a conversation and a giggle. When I turned my head, I saw 3 men walking towards me. I felt a cold sweat run down my back, but I didn't want to show them that I was afraid, so I kept going. They were still talking as they followed me, but I didn't know what they were saying because they were speaking a different language. When I reached the bridge, they had caught up with me and surrounded me. I pushed forward and one of them leaned over to me, whispering something into my ear followed by a laugh. I was terrified. Part 2 of how I was saved by a stranger. The 3 men were 6 feet tall and surrounding me as I walked on the bridge. They started making animal noises, howling, growling, whistling, and kissing the air loudly. They did all of this extremely close to my face. I had nowhere to escape to because I was on the bridge and would kill myself if I jumped into the water. The 2 minutes across the bridge felt like an eternity to me. When we got to the end of the bridge, I was sweaty, close to tears, and felt like puking. I was shaking, which only amused them more. That's when a miracle happened. Someone loudly called my name. I looked up to see a tall, older man approaching us. I had no idea who he was or how he knew my name, but it didn't matter because I felt like he was my guardian angel. He was staring furiously at the strangers and they fell silent. He asked them what they were doing to his girlfriend, then stretched out his hand to me, never taking his eyes off of them. I grabbed his hand and nestled his shoulder. My heart was beating fast and loud, but I was so thankful. I thought the 3 men would attack him, but they didn't. I almost heard their teeth grinding as they muttered something. Shortly after, I broke down in tears. He walked me home and told me he was walking near the bridge when he saw everything go down. I asked him how he knew my name and he looked surprised, then smiled. He said he didn't and he just picked a popular name. He dropped me off and we parted ways, but I'll always be thankful to him.
My husband humiliated me at our wedding by shoving my face into our cake. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Also, I have COVID and I was told that I need to rest, so I'm not filming. I have to repeat content. I'm sorry. I love you guys though. Before we got engaged, my husband and I had only known each other for 3 months. We actually met when we were traveling, so we didn't even live in the same country. This was my first mistake. After we met, he asked me to come visit visited him again. And I did. I didn't ask him to come visit me, he asked me. Did I pay for my own flight? Yes. Did I split the bill with him? Yes. But here's the thing. He was doing everything else right. He was treating me well, buying me gifts, giving me so much attention, acting like he was already my husband. We got engaged 3 months later and none of my friends or my family knew him. And we decided to have a destination wedding. This meant the only time my parents met him was at our wedding, and my friends. Before our wedding, he and I had not lived together. I was the one that was going to visit him all the time. In preparation for our wedding, I really wanted this one specific makeup artist. Yeah, and both of our parents decided to pay for the wedding. Our budget for the wedding was $80,000, so it was a lot. The makeup artist I wanted was $3,000. I met with the makeup artist twice. This way we could try out 2 styles of makeup. We finally landed on one that I loved. The hairstylist charged me another $3,000. So my husband knew how much effort I put into my makeup and my hair. Before the wedding, I made him swear that he would not shove my face into the cake. And he agreed. Fast forward to cutting the cake. He pushed my face into the cake so hard, I almost got knocked out. Everyone ran over to me. Part 2 is up.
My ex ruined his life and I'm buzzing about it. Story time. So I found out that my ex was having an affair. He told me that he'd found a woman at work and he'd fallen in love with her. He told me that he no longer loved me and that he wanted a divorce. And we had been together since we were in our teens. Bearing in mind, he'd known this woman for 3 months. And we had 3 children together as well. And I desperately fought for our marriage, but he simply just would not stop seeing this woman. This one weekend, he disappeared from Friday afternoon till Sunday night. And that was the final straw, so I was like, see ya, and I threw him out. And he immediately moved in with this other girl. The only excuse he ever gave me was that there was just something about this girl and he deserved to be happy. And that was it. That was the excuse for throwing literally everything away. We ended up finalising the divorce in early 2022. So although I had some very strong feelings towards him, I faked it enough to get some pretty favourable divorce terms from him. Seeing that he was so intent on being with his dream girl super quick that he wasn't really intending on having a long divorce. In the end, I got to keep my house, which was good because I bought this from my grandma. I did have to give him quite a hefty payout though.
This is why you should never watch TV late at night. Once a mother and a father decided they needed a break, so they planned a night out together, and they left their 2 children with their babysitter at home. Everything was going good, the children were well behaved, and the babysitter was just sitting around while watching the kids, but eventually she decided that she wanted to watch some TV. It turns out she couldn't watch it downstairs because they didn't have cable downstairs, so she called the parents and asked if she could watch TV with the kids in their room upstairs. The parents agreed. They were about to hang up the phone when the babysitter had one final request. As she entered the parents' bedroom, she asked if she could cover up their large clown statue with a cloth or a blanket. She said it was making her very uncomfortable. The phone line went dead for a second. Then the mother said over the phone, "Take the children and get out of the house. We don't have a clown statue." As the babysitter turned around, she saw the corners of the clown's mouth widen into a smile. Have you ever seen a painting that looked extremely realistic? Jake was waiting for his mom when he saw a strangely realistic painting, but he made one mistake that would lead to terrifying consequences. During his mom's doctor's appointment, Jake was sitting alone in the hospital waiting room. That's when he saw the painting. It looked so real, almost like a photo. He was promised ice cream if he sat quietly, but he found himself growing more and more curious. He felt like he needed to move closer to the painting, so he got up and walked towards it. The painting was of an old man, but there was something wrong with it. It seemed like the eyes would follow Jake no matter where he'd walk. But soon something even more unbelievable would happen, something no one can explain. The painting, needless to say, made Jake feel creeped out, but he tried not to feel so scared. It was a painting after all. Then Jake leaned in and saw one weird detail. The old man had unusually long fingers and fingernails. A bit later, Jake's mom came out of the doctor's office, but Jake was nowhere to be found. She called him but got no reply. Then she turned around and saw a very realistic painting on the wall. The boy in the painting looked oddly familiar.
This is why you should be very careful who you talk to online. A 16-year-old girl was home with her mom when she got a disturbing text message from a boy she had recently met on Snapchat. He told her he was right outside of her house, but when she went to look, no one was there. Frightened, she decides to sleep in her mom's room that night, and right before she goes to bed, she gets another text from the boy that just says, "I'm in your house." She shows her mom, who immediately searches the whole house, checks every door, turns on every light. There's no one there. So even though they're creeped out, they go back to bed. The next morning she gets up and she goes back to her bedroom and immediately feels like she's being watched. She checks in her closet, looks behind her door, there's no one there. Then she noticed that the shoe boxes she normally kept perfectly arranged next to her bed had been moved. So she crouches down to put them back in order, and then out of the corner of her eye she notices something. The boy who was texting her was under her.
This is why you should be careful who you believe. Once there was a girl named Danny who lived with her parents, but one day she came home and found something terrifying. She went to the kitchen to get some water, but dropped the glass and screamed in terror. On the floor, she saw the body of her mother. Then her father burst into the room. He said, "Danny, listen carefully. Your mom was trying to run away and abandon us. We got in a fight. She fell. It was an accident. I'm so sorry." Danny was in shock, but nothing could have prepared her for what her father said next. "We had to get rid of the evidence ourselves. If the neighbors ask questions, just say she ran away with another man." Danny ran upstairs to her room in tears. That's when she found something strange. On her bed was a suitcase with all her clothes folded inside. On top of the suitcase was a note. It said, "Danny, I packed your things. We need to leave. Your father has gone insane."